Welcome everyone to this webinar about Shadow IT and its pros and cons. We've learned that Shadow IT is much more widespread than you'd expect. Do you, for example, view Dropbox, Evernote, or all those other useful tools as Shadow IT? Those tools are examples of services that are outside the control of the IT department, and they're used with carefreeness for both private and business purposes. My name is Morten Müller. I'm a senior technical writer at CapaSystems, and with me I have Arne Skolhaug, who is our commercial product manager. The purpose of this webinar is to share with you some of CapaSystems' experiences and thoughts about Shadow IT. The idea is to share the solutions to some of the challenges that our consultants and service managers experience when they visit our customers. Here is a brief user guide to GoToWebinar. We invite you to send your comments and we'll be happy to answer your questions. So don't hesitate to contact us during the session or afterwards. Use the questions dialog in GoToWebinar. Write your question, click send, and we'll get in touch. We'd also very much appreciate if you would fill out the questionnaire that we sent to you after the webinar. It'll greatly help us evaluate the content and form of the webinar. We start with a short introduction to CapaSystems webinars. In the next couple of points, we encompass the need to define Shadow IT, as well as the position of the stakeholders in an organization. As always, when you're dealing with a relatively new phenomenon, you should look up from your desk and see if your point of view also matches the real world. We'll help you do that by taking a reality check followed by a list of things that need to change in IT departments. The suggestions for changes that we're addressing will help you and your companies turn the threat of Shadow IT into an opportunity. We'll round up the webinar with the major takeaways and, of course, some answers to your questions.
Hello, my name is Arne Skolhaug. I'm Commercial Product Manager at CapaSystems. We like to share our experiences and thoughts about subjects where we have excellence. Our aim is to help companies to move from present-day IT operations to business-centric management of services. We strive to do that through quality in products and services, as well as through white papers and webinars. Find this presentation and other free resources at CapaSystems.com. I hope you'll enjoy this webinar.
Now let's start by shedding some light on Shadow IT. One definition comes from Gartner, who has taken a very plain and simple approach. If computers, devices, software, or IT services are not controlled by a company's IT organization, then it should be viewed as Shadow IT. This is of course a very broad definition that turns almost everything that's not delivered and supported by the IT department into a dubious affair. If we give it a second thought, it seems fair enough that you can't expect an IT department to be responsible for something that they don't know about. When we choose to call it Shadow IT, it's not to criminalize the people who acquire it, but because of the lack of in-depth technological knowledge that often accompanies decisions about shortcutting procurement processes. Actually, we see Shadow IT as a response to an internal conflict in the organization between business needs on the one side and IT governance on the other. What we're looking at is a symptom of neglect from the IT department of legitimate business needs. IT services that cannot be delivered internally at the speed or in a form that fits business purposes. Cloud services that have become a commodity to end users. They will intuitively use the same tools for work as they do privately. The gap between the perspective of business line middle management and the perspective of IT organizations makes it difficult to tie the ends together. Let's look at an example. In a company, the marketing department decides to use a cloud-based customer relation management system to collect information about customer requests. It's a highly specialized tool that tracks visitor activity on the company's website, the time spent, recurring visits, downloads, requests for information, etc. Data is in the cloud, and because of a high price per user, the license key is installed in a single computer that is used only for this purpose. Everything worked fine for 18 months. There was no reason whatsoever to involve the IT department in the operation of the CRM service. Now, if you start getting a feeling of where this is heading, then let me assure you that no one saw any danger signs before it was too late. However, as you know, it's necessary to periodically maintain company software with security updates, etc. So one day, the firewall routinely got a security update, and that made the CRM web service inaccessible. The rest of the story is all about managers getting furious over being ignored by IT support, and over the amount of time it took to find and solve the problem. To tell you the truth, it was also an opportunity for the IT department to make an example of what happens when procurement of IT is done by people without the technical insight. The loss of opportunities and the impact on sales was significant, and the CIO was close to getting a very unpleasant message because of the problems with IT infrastructure and the lack of support. What happened was not out of bad will, but a result of different priorities and lack of communication. When we look at the traditional IT organization, the perspective is on daily IT operations and on keeping the budget. For obvious reasons, CIOs don't receive bonuses or get promoted for delivering unstable IT services or exceeding their budgets. As digitalization becomes more and more integrated in every aspect of business life, the need for a steady hand to execute the IT strategy becomes even more critical. For the business lines, the perspective is on production, sales, and customers. This is where money comes from, and it's no longer just a question of competitors and marketing. Today's top-level managers face the risk of seeing their business being disrupted by newcomers who are able to digitalize services and make new business models. Flexibility and speed is therefore highly valued, and if it can't be delivered internally due to standardization or other obstacles, it's tempting to buy IT services externally and adjust over time. Both parties are right from their own perspectives. The question is if there's a way to overcome the differences. Let's take a closer look at what's involved. This rather dystopic landscape illustrates the negative consequences that could come from shadow IT. The IT landscape that has taken decades of blood, sweat and tears to build is suddenly under attack. Security breaches where hackers and blackmailers will ruin or steal the company's most valuable assets. Vital data will be spread all over the internet, and the ability to synchronize and reuse data will be obsolete. Inevitably, there will be system breakdowns and loss of service on the different solutions bought without involvement from the IT department. IT service and support will not be able to keep up with new systems that are introduced, and they won't be aware of old systems that are no longer used. The benefits of discounts and standardized procurement will be lost. The vendors will have free access to sell to every individual in the whole organization. From the desk of the traditional CIO, there are plenty of reasons why procurement outside of the control of the IT department should be met with capital punishment. The polar opposite is a generation of business people who have grown up with internet and smartphones, who view information technology as a commodity in line with power supply and tap water. When we ask them, the advantages of shadow IT are very easy to articulate. Delivery time is hours instead of weeks or months. No chain of command to ruin or slow down brilliant ideas. Decision power at your fingertips. Flexibility and scalability as long as your credit card allows. Available from a browser everywhere in the world with an intuitive user interface. When you take these points into account, it's not hard to understand that the endless number of available IT services in the cloud is seen as a very attractive alternative to outdated legacy systems. Before we let ourselves get carried away, let's have a look at the realities behind these assertions. Through 2014 and 2015, a highly interesting investigation was carried out by Cisco. Through log files on the network equipment at a number of large companies, they counted the number of cloud services in use per company. The average number of cloud services is shown as the red dashed line. During the same period, they interviewed the CIOs about the estimated number of cloud services in the company. That is the blue dotted line at the bottom. As you can see, the divergence between the two is significant, to put it mildly. Where CIOs on average were underestimating by a factor of 7 in the beginning of 2014, this rose to a factor 15 by the end of last year. As the red arrow indicates, this trend is assumed to continue. What should we do about it? Is it a gridlock situation where everybody involved fights to the bitter end? Or are there different roads to take? At CapaSystems, we believe, together with Gartner, that problems are often solved most efficiently through communication. If IT managers take the initiative to invite senior executives off the business lines, they will also get credit for addressing the challenges and finding new ways. These discussions should be open-minded and focused on partnerships in order to agree on how to respond to the changes in conditions for both IT departments and business lines. It's fairly obvious that there is an ongoing change in the role of IT when terms like business disruption, Uberification, Internet of Things, and big data are real challenges and no longer just words in an article. Let's look at what these changes mean. The stipulations on this list have been embedded into the DNA of IT management at almost any internal supplier of IT services. Some of these can be traced back 40, even 50 years and have been refined as the changes in organizations demanded it. The shift from internal supplier to business partner feels very much like gene modification, and for IT organizations it can feel like going against everything they've learned. What we're talking about is, for example, to go from a budget and cost-driven position to a much more proactive and innovative approach. This means becoming part of business development and providing digital solutions to business challenges, for example, customer service, data analysis, logistics, and quality assurance. The term zero profit center covers the need for IT management to be willing to take a business risk. If you buy an IT service from the cloud vendor runs the associated business risk. Several international companies like Deutsche Telekom and Novo Nordisk have taken it a step further and made separate business units out of their former internal IT departments. For internal IT, it should not lead to overpricing, but rather to make sure that services are priced according to the market. The need for coordination will obviously rise when procurement of IT services happens across the organization. Instead of imposing limitations, we suggest that IT takes responsibility for collecting information and provides advice and creates synergy through their experience with existing solutions. It would be a misunderstanding to claim that IT governance has outlived its role in order to regulate who does what in relation to IT. On the other hand, IT governance should be an interaction with business strategy. So IT governance supports the strategy and becomes a flexible tool that makes sure that efficiency and security has their say in the day-to-day use of IT services. Without governance and policies in place, it can be hard to tell the difference between a trusted employee who uses Dropbox out of convenience and a disloyal one who copies confidential information for elusive purposes. In a world where computers are embedded in almost everything and people expect to have access to company systems from their own personal devices everywhere in the world, it doesn't seem worthwhile to focus solely on what's inside the borders of the company firewall. Companies claim that their greatest asset is their employees, and consequently, the focus should be on providing IT services that make the employees as productive as possible. One of the latest buzzwords in literature about IT is DevOps. It's a clipped compound of the words development and operation. The idea is to speed up delivery of new IT systems and provide higher quality. If you're facing functional silos in IT, it will take some effort to fix it. Nevertheless, it's speed and agility that you need to meet the competitors and upcoming players in the market. To overcome the obstacles, an approach towards mobile apps and cooperation with external developers could well be a strategy. So could looking further into cloud services as an alternative to your existing legacy systems. In addition to this, IT must build competencies in management of vendor contracts for IT services. It takes legal as well as technical skills to figure out the consequences of the small print on the contract. In our experience, people often forget to estimate the load on infrastructure and the ability to share data from different cloud services. Through our cooperation with numerous clients throughout Europe and the USA, we've realized that most people are enthusiastic about what they do and that they take great pride in their work. A natural part of this is that they also have feelings involved. To avoid blame games, we recommend that discussions about shadow IT should be based on facts about day-to-day use instead of responsibility for things that went wrong, as was the case in our example some slides ago about the marketing CRM system. Performance Guard from CapaSystems gives you valid information about systems, usage patterns, and the time of entry for all users across the organization. With a tool like Performance Guard, you have the information required to become an insightful business partner rather than just a traditional IT supplier. During this webinar, we've shared with you some of the things that we've learned about shadow IT. There are plenty of other subjects to address, like the Internet of Things, performance optimization, etc., but that will have to be the next time we invite you to a webinar. To sum up the main points from today's session, the view on shadow IT depends on your role in the organization. Shadow IT cannot be ruled away. Base your discussion on facts. Shadow IT is also an opportunity for change. Encourage cooperation in order to minimize drawbacks. As a complimentary follow-up, we've collected some additional resources. At CapaSystems.com, please find our white papers on Shadow IT and other similar subjects. There's also a leaflet that elaborates on the takeaways from today's webinar. And there's of course a recording of today's webinar if you'd like to review it or share it with your colleagues. Thank you very much for participating today. We hope that you found something useful during this session. We'll be available here for a while, so don't hesitate to get in touch with us. If you come up with questions at a later stage, or if you'd like to get in touch with us for other reasons, please use this email address, or simply call us at CapaSystems.